Hello and welcome to The Vaccine. I'm Jeremy Fernandez. Tonight, almost half of Australia's population is under lockdown as health authorities in New South Wales and Victoria try to get on top of the COVID outbreak that started in Sydney 4 weeks ago. The total number of cases associated with this outbreak is now more than 1,000 in New South Wales alone. But it's the number of people who've been infectious in the community that's continuing to cause a lot of concern.
We just need people to stop moving around, and whilst we know that southwestern Sydney has the bulk of the cases, it's really important for all of us, no matter where you live, no matter your circumstances, to stay at home, because we know how easily the virus spreads and we know how easily other communities can get that virus.
In Victoria, authorities are racing against a growing list of exposure sites that include locations in regional areas as well as the MCG in Melbourne. There are now more than 24 cases there. Premier Daniel Andrews says it underscores the need for a sudden, hard lockdown.
These additional cases, if they had not been in a situation where we're limiting movement, then we know what that means. It means that we finish up with this running wild. We now have 100 exposure sites, 1,500 primary close contacts, 5,000 secondary close contacts. We are out to 7 rings in terms of contact between cases and everybody that they have spent time with.
Dr. Norman Swan joins us now. Norman, we now have a real-time case study of Victoria's short, sharp lockdown versus New South Wales's slow and steady approach. Will Victoria be able to quash this lockdown in 5 days?
One would hope so. They're really worried, though. The MCG is a problem. Bacchus Marsh is a problem. So they've got potentially large spread, and they've got a problem in the Royal Melbourne Hospital as well. So Victoria does have a job to do to get this under control. And you talk about case studies, they've got the case study of New South Wales where they didn't go to a short, sharp lockdown, and look what's happened.
So Victoria's gone down this route of defining what constitutes essential service providers, essential work. Gladys Berejiklian is resisting that. Does that make a difference in how quickly the outbreak can be contained?
Well, they put in some new restrictions about a week ago. You would expect the curve to be bending by now a little bit and start to see the effect of that. And you're not. The number of daily cases, at least as we speak now, who have been circulating fully in the community is round about the same. And the overall cases are going a bit up and down. But that is the key number there, is that number of cases. And just to be sobering about this, when Victoria in the second wave, coming out of the second wave, was at 80-odd cases a day, which is kind of where Sydney is at the moment, was more than that, 80 and 100, took 2 months to get down, 2 months. And that's under fairly strict lockdown. So there are no prizes for a slow and steady approach in this situation. You've got to go hard and you've got to go early. And the question is how much more can New South Wales do? Well, they could just be much clearer about retail and what's essential retail and what are essential jobs and what's expected there. 5-kilometre radius rather than 10-kilometre radius. And you could say, well, you don't know which of that stuff works, and it's true, you don't know which of that works. But I think it all goes to just giving a clear signal to people that they need to stay at home. That's why schools close. You do get spread in schools, and you do have this Delta virus. Hundreds of thousands of children in Britain have been, prior to the school, I think they're at school holidays now, but prior to that, they were at home because of contact with COVID-19. But the other thing that happens with school closures is you take parents off the roads going to and from schools with kids in their cars. So New South Wales has got to go to another level, probably. And this is not me talking. These are experienced epidemiologists who are looking at this at the University of Sydney, University of Melbourne, Burnett Institute. There aren't very many, I can't find very many experienced epidemiologists in this area who are saying that they shouldn't go to a higher level of lockdown.
Now, premiers all over the country are citing health advice. The Prime Minister is citing health advice, which sits on an enormous spectrum. Even basic assumptions about what a lockdown means, what essential work means, are in dispute. Is the health advice politicised, and is it undermining the credibility of those people who are giving the health advice?
Well, the problem with health advice varies according to the jurisdiction. There is utter secrecy at a federal level we don't know the evidence base on which some groups make their decisions, the Infection Control Expert Group, the Principal Health Committee, and others. We don't know how they're making their decisions, on what basis, how they're justified. And because we sometimes don't even know the decisions they make. And when they go to the politicians, we don't know how they make the decisions either. In New South Wales, the legislation has the health minister who has the power rather than the chief health officer, which is the case. The legal power rests with the chief health officer, for example, in Victoria. So, it's tempting to assume there's some politics in it. New South Wales has some excellent epidemiologists. It's a discipline. The facts are the facts, and the interpretation is the interpretation. It's hard to imagine that really good epidemiologists in New South Wales are giving different advice from equally good epidemiologists elsewhere. What goes on top is the political layer, and there has been a lot of pressure against lockdown within the cabinet there. So you're not quite sure just how much they're compromising because of that, and it's because it's not transparent. It looks transparent because there's a press conference every day and they give a lot of information to their credit, but it's not entirely transparent.
Norman Swan, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we're all told that vaccinations are our way out of this pandemic, but what happens after you receive your jabs? Every day, more and more of us are getting vaccinated. It's one of the biggest peacetime efforts in history. And it's working. In Israel, the number of symptomatic cases in vaccinated people has fallen 94%. For the first time since March of 2020, the USA has less than 300 deaths per day. Countries around the world are reopening. It's a global challenge. But each of us has a role to play. So once you're vaccinated, are you safe? And what should you be able to do? To help explain the effectiveness of vaccines, let's talk about baseball.
That's a rocket. Giddy up, baby. Giddy up. Gone. We got a ball game.
In May, one player and 8 other staff from the New York Yankees all tested positive for COVID-19, despite everyone on the team being fully vaccinated. That's right, they were vaccinated and 9 people still got the virus. The outbreak is thought to have started with the third base coach, Phil Nevin. It's possible that his vaccine failed. He became mildly ill. 7 of the cases were other coaches or team officials. And then there was Gleyber Torres, the shortstop.
What a play by Gleyber Torres.
Of those cases, 7 showed no symptoms at all. The last case had only mild symptoms. But the fact that 9 people out of 60 caught the disease in the first place still seems pretty high. That's 15% of the team. Now, let's rewind a year to a time before most people in the US were vaccinated.
There are serious questions about whether Major League Baseball can go on.
In 2020, there were similar outbreaks in 2 other American baseball teams. In July, 18 players and 2 coaches from the Miami Marlins tested positive. Soon after that, the St. Louis Cardinals had an outbreak of their own, with 10 players and 2 staff. That's about 30 to 40% of those teams. Now, if the Yankees had the same rate of transmission, it wouldn't have been just 9 cases, it would have been 24. And that suggests vaccines are cutting the risk of transmission by half. That figure has been backed up by studies from the UK and Israel. There's similar data here in Australia too. Of the 40 people who attended a party at Hoxton Park during Sydney's outbreak, 7 people who'd been vaccinated never got sick. The rest had not been vaccinated. 30 caught the disease, only 3 escaped. Now, an important point for the AstraZeneca, Pfizer and eventually Moderna vaccines used in Australia. You're only considered fully vaccinated after you've had both doses, plus an extra 2 weeks after your second dose to be fully immune. If you've had both doses, waited for 2 weeks and then still get the virus, you're what's called a breakthrough case. Breakthrough cases are expected because vaccines are never 100% foolproof. There are also different levels of immunity with all vaccines. effective immunity and sterilising immunity. Sterilising immunity is the gold standard and it's very difficult to achieve. This is when the vaccine acts so quickly that the virus particles are neutralised the moment they enter our bodies. The measles vaccine does this, and so does the hepatitis vaccine. But most vaccines only achieve effective immunity. In these cases, the virus can get into our systems and enter our cells and even start to replicate. But that's when the antibodies generated by the vaccines get to work. And it shouldn't take long for them to overwhelm the virus, stopping it in its tracks and preventing the virus from becoming an infection. What it means is that you'll end up with a milder case, or might even have no symptoms at all. And that's what happened with the New York Yankees.
Yankees win.
In the US, the CDC has so little concern about these cases, they aren't even counting them anymore. Vaccinated Americans can now gather in groups without a mask, and they're considered safe, even though there are still thousands of cases every day. Most importantly, effective immunity means that even if you are a breakthrough case, it shouldn't cause hospitalisation or death. Now, before you run out and declare freedom, there is a word of caution. Israel, often highlighted as the world leader in vaccination, has now inoculated 60% of its population. But as restrictions have eased and the Delta variant has spread, Israel has discovered that the effectiveness of the Pfizer vaccine has dropped from 90% to 60%. Pfizer has confirmed they've seen the same reduction in their own studies and in response is now planning a third shot of its vaccine. In the UK, everything is reopening. Wimbledon was played in front of a maskless crowd. So too was the Euro 2020 final at Wembley. Pubs, restaurants and shops have reopened with few restrictions in place.
If we don't go ahead now, when will we be able to return to normal?
Driven by the spread of the Delta virus, cases in the UK have actually been increasing, and they've been increasing sharply. However, authorities there are not that worried. Contact tracing has been done away with, and reports of daily case numbers are a thing of the past.
I want to stress that this pandemic is far from over.
Between February and June, the UK recorded 92,029 cases of the Delta strain. Of those, 58% were unvaccinated, 34% had one shot, 8% were fully vaccinated. Breakthrough cases. Here's the thing, unfortunately, there will be deaths from COVID, even among vaccinated people. It's the sad reality of most disease. Just as with the flu shot, getting a booster injection for COVID may be required every year. It'll keep antibody levels high and could be adjusted to deal with new variants. It is a balance of risk, but here's where it's dangerous for Australia right now, because not enough of us are vaccinated yet. If vaccinated asymptomatic people are walking around with the virus, even though they aren't sick, they still can infect those around them. Until we reach those magic numbers of herd immunity, somewhere between 60 and 80%, it isn't safe to do what Israel, the UK or the USA have done. So the answer is yes. Once you're vaccinated, you are largely safe, but not everyone around you is. Yet. And that is the vaccine for this week. You can catch up with the show anytime on iView and the ABC's YouTube channel. And don't forget to check those exposure sites with your local health authorities if you've been to any of the states battling these outbreaks right now. From all of us, stay safe. Good luck with the lockdown if you are locked down. Bye for now.